Okay, let's dive in. Something pretty significant just happened, policy-wise. A change went into effect very early this morning.
That's right. We're talking about U.S. travel and immigration.
Exactly. And we're going to unpack it by looking closely at one source. A CBS News article, updated just today, June 9th, 2025. It's all about President Trump's new travel ban.
Mm-hmm.
So our mission here is pretty straightforward. We'll explore this article together, pull out the key information so you understand exactly what the ban is, who the article says it impacts, and the reasons given.
But only based on what's in this CBS piece.
Precisely. Stick to the source. So just briefly, what is the ban, according to this article?
Well, the article says it's a proclamation, and it bars or restricts travelers and immigrants from, well, 19 countries in total.
19. Wow.
And it kicked in right at 12:01 a.m. this morning, Monday, June 9th.
Okay, so the clock literally just started. The article mentions, national security implications being cited. It frames it that way.
Right. Historical context, too.
Yes. And we're going to navigate the details impartially, just reporting what the article presents.
Yeah.
So based on this source, what's the scope? Who does it actually cover?
Okay, so the piece breaks it down. There are basically two groups of countries mentioned. For the first group, 12 countries, the proclamation bans entry for foreigners, with some exceptions, which the article gets into later.
Okay.
This ban applies to people trying to come permanently, as legal immigrants, and also those coming on temporary visas. Think tourists, for example.
Right. And those 12 countries are, the article lists them.
It does. Let's see. Afghanistan, Myanmar, Chad, the Republic of the Congo, Equatorial Guinea, Eritrea, Haiti, Iran, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and Yemen.
Okay, that's quite a list. And it covers both permanent and temporary entry for those 12. What about the second group you mentioned? There were 19 total.
Right, the other 7. For these, the article says the proclamation partially suspends entry. It's a bit different.
Partially. How so?
The restriction for this group, according to the article, applies specifically to legal immigrants and certain temporary visa holders. So it seems a bit more targeted than the first group.
Got it. And which countries fall into that category?
The article lists these 7 as Burundi, Cuba, Laos, Sierra Leone, Togo, Turkmenistan, and Venezuela.
Okay. So a broader ban on 12, partial suspension for 7, affecting specific visa types in that second group, all straight from the article. And effective, as you said, right at the start of today.
12:01 a.m.
Now, the article doesn't just list the countries. It talks about why these specific nations were chosen. What does the source say about the reasoning?
It points to national security concerns cited by the White House. The article actually reports that President Trump directed officials, like on day 1 of his second term, to do a security review of high-risk regions.
A security review, okay.
Yeah, and that review was meant to lead to recommendations for these kinds of measures.
And did the article specify what factors went into that review? What criteria put these countries on the list?
It does. It actually quotes the president listing the factors officials looked at. Things like, let me get this right from the article, the large-scale presence of terrorists, failure to cooperate on visa security, inability to verify travelers' identities.
Okay, so verification issues.
Right. Inadequate record-keeping of criminal histories, and persistently high rates of illegal visa overstays and other things. That's the quote in the piece.
So a range of factors tied to security cooperation, identity checks, records. That's the stated basis per the article. The piece also has a direct quote from President Trump that kind of sums it up.
Yeah, it does. He's quoted saying, very simply, we cannot have open migration from any country where we cannot safely and reliably vet and screen those who seek to enter the United States.
Vetting and screening.
Exactly. The article uses that word vetting quite a bit in this context, referring to checking travelers. That quote really captures the administration's stated position, as presented in the source.
That's helpful context from the article. Now, what's interesting is the source mentions a specific recent event that was cited as part of the justification, adds another layer.
Yes, the article states, President Trump brought up the recent attack at a march, the one supporting Israeli hostages in Boulder, Colorado.
Ah, okay.
And the piece notes that an Egyptian national was charged in connection with that attack.
But wait, you read the list of 19 countries earlier. Egypt wasn't on it, was it?
Exactly right. And the article makes that specific point. Egypt is not currently on the list in the proclamation.
So why mention the attack involving an Egyptian national?
Well, the article explains that while Egypt isn't banned, The proclamation does direct officials to specifically assess the adequacy of Egypt's vetting policies.
Ah, I see.
Yeah, in light of recent events is the phrasing used in the article. So Egypt's not banned today, but the source suggests it's kind of under review because of this.
That's a really specific detail from the source. Okay, so we have the countries, the reasons given, the link to the Boulder event, but the ban isn't absolute, right? The article mentions exceptions. Who does the source say is not affected?
Right, there are several exemptions outlined in the decree according to the article. First, U.S. permanent residents, green card holders, they're exempt.
Okay, that makes sense.
Also, spouses and children of U.S. citizens are exempt, but the article adds a condition. They need clear and convincing evidence of identity and family relationship.
Clear and convincing evidence. Okay. Any others mentioned?
Yep. The article lists Afghans who helped U.S. forces and have those special visas. Diplomats are also exempt.
Right.
And then, interestingly, the source notes exemptions for athletes coming from major events like the World Cup or the Olympics.
Oh, okay.
Plus dual nationals, if they have a passport from a country not on the banned list, and people involved in adoptions.
So, quite a few specific carve-outs, even for the listed countries, as detailed in the article. Does the source say if this list of 19 countries is set in stone? Or could it change?
The article suggests it could change. It quotes President Trump saying the list might be revised if countries make material improvements on the security issues.
Improvements could get them off the list.
Right. And conversely, the source also notes he said new countries could be added as threats emerge around the world. So it seems dynamic, potentially.
Okay. Now, this kind of policy, it feels familiar. The article itself brings up the history, doesn't it? Puts it in context.
It absolutely does. The piece explicitly states that this follows a series of travel bans from his first administration.
Right, I remember that.
And the article points out, just like those earlier ones, this new proclamation could face lawsuits.
Does it remind us how those previous legal challenges went? The article mentions the Supreme Court, I believe.
It does. It notes that the third version of the first-term ban was ultimately upheld by the Supreme Court. That was back in the summer of 2018.
And the reasoning?
The source says the conservative justices cited the president's broad authority over restricting entry of foreigners, on national security grounds. That was the basis mentioned in the article for the court's decision.
And the article actually traces how those first-term bans changed over time, right? It wasn't always the same list.
Exactly. The piece recounts the first one, January 2017. That targeted 7 predominantly Muslim-majority countries: Iran, Iraq, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, Syria, and Yemen.
Mm-hmm.
And the article notes that caused a huge outcry, chaos at airports, lots of legal challenges. Opponents argued it was discriminatory.
And then the list changed.
Yeah, the article says in March 2017, Iraq came off the list, but Chad, Venezuela, and North Korea were added.
Okay.
Then later in 2020, it expanded again. Immigration restrictions were added for nationals from Nigeria, Eritrea, Sudan, Tanzania, Myanmar, and Kyrgyzstan. The source also mentions Chad was later removed during that first term.
So a real evolution even back then. Legal fights, shifting lists, but eventually upheld by the Supreme Court based on that national security authority argument described in the article. And what happened to that ban eventually? The source reminds us.
Simple point in the article. When President Joe Biden took office, he rescinded that ban.
Right. Which brings us full circle to today's action, which this article clearly links to that whole history. The piece even includes President Trump's view on how effective those first bans were.
Yeah, he's quoted directly in the article saying, "In my first term, my powerful travel restrictions were one of our most successful policies, and they were a key part of preventing major foreign terror attacks on American soil." That's his take, as reported in the source.
Okay. So wrapping this up, why is digging into just this one CBS article useful for you listening right now?
Well, it gives you a clear, factual snapshot based only on this source.
Right. You get the basics of the policy that started today, the specific reasons the White House gave, according to the article, the security review, the Boulder incident mention. You get the crucial exceptions listed in the source.
And that important history, the context of the previous bans, the legal battles, the Supreme Court ruling, Biden rescinding it, all is laid out in this one piece.
It helps you understand a major current event by focusing solely on the details presented right here in this specific article. No outside noise, just what this source reports.
Exactly. By sticking to this article, you see the countries, the restriction levels, the effective date, the stated justifications, the exceptions, and the history provided within this single report.
So to recap, we've unpacked the details from the CBS News article about the new travel ban effective today. The countries involved, the stated reasons tied to security reviews in that specific event, the exemptions listed, and the history of prior bans and court cases mentioned in the piece, all drawn exclusively from this source.
Hmm. So, thinking only about what we've discussed from this article, it lists criteria like, poor record keeping or inability to verify identities as reasons for choosing countries. But it also lists specific exceptions, like for athletes or certain family members.
Right.
So, based purely on those details in the article, maybe something for you to mull over is, how might those stated criteria apply across the specific list of 19 countries? Or how do the exceptions mentioned in the proclamation balance against those stated national security concerns? Just food for thought, based strictly on the information presented in the source we dove into.
Definitely something to consider. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the source material.